Okay, it's 6:30, and I'd like to get started. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 25th, 2022 Zoning Hearing Board. Thank you for coming this evening. And before we start, I would like to make sure that everyone has signed in for this meeting in the back entrance of the room. If you have not, please do so because it must be on.
John, do you want to get Scott on the phone?
Okay.
We have one board member that's going to be participating by telephone for quorum.
All right. How do I go back? Eight. There it goes. Okay. Good. 449 1425. Thanks.
Hello, this is Scott.
Scott, good evening. John DePlacido.
Hi, John.
We are here at the meeting, and we're just getting ready to start.
Okay.
Okay, we'll continue. I am John DePlacido, and the other board members are Bob Tanner, Scott Calhoun, and Jacqueline Spry. First of all, I'd like to introduce Matthew Puz. He's the Zoning and Development Officer. Julie Maggio, the Assistant Zoning and Developmental Officer. Jeremy Toman, our board solicitor, and Cecilia Mohana, the court reporter. Please let the record reflect that member Scott Calhoun is participating in this meeting via telephone, and that members Bob Tanner and Jacqueline Spry are absent. We have a couple of procedural matters that need to be addressed as a part of this meeting. Scott?
Well, first, as acting chairperson of this board, I hereby designate alternate board member John DePlacido as board member to serve as a replacement for member Spry in order to establish a quorum for tonight's meeting. Secondly, I hereby motion that we approve John as a hearing officer for tonight's hearing.
And I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Let the record reflect that the motion carried. Mr. Calhoun, I understand that you must leave. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. The only other business before us is the appeal filed by the appellant, Kent Bartlett, of Bartlett Signs, for property at 2088 Interchange Road, being appeal number 22-08. After the presentation by the appellant, I will hear from those in favor of the appeal, and then those opposed. Any documents or evidence that is presented must be kept for a period of 60 days for our records. Since a hearing officer has been appointed, prior to any decision being made, the appellant can waive the decision or findings by the board and accept the decision or findings of the hearing officer as final. If the appellant elects to waive the decision or findings by the board, then the hearing officer may render a decision as early as tonight. If not, the court record will be delivered to each of the members, and a decision will be rendered at our next scheduled meeting. If a decision is rendered tonight and you do not care to wait for the decision, you may call the zoning office in the morning after 8:30 a.m. I would now ask that everyone please stand to be sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please say I do. I do. Okay. Mr. Bartlett, will you waive the decision or findings by the board and accept the decisions or findings of me as the hearing officer as final. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll get started. Mr. Puz, can you please introduce the appeal number 22-08?
Yes, there is one item on the agenda this evening, appeal number 22-8, Bartlett Signs for property located at 2088 Interchange Road, Unit 235, asking for a variance from Article 6 sign regulations to install 2 building signs in the C2 Regional Commercial District, formerly the C4 Regional Commercial District.
Okay. I will hear any testimony. Yeah. Actually, right there, yes, thanks.
Yeah, please state your name for the record.
Kent Bartlett, Bartlett Signs, 7628 Fire Drive, Fairview, PA, 16415. Basically, the current ordinance, they've got 51-foot 11 lease line, so that gives them a little less than 52 square foot of signage. For the front elevation, same thing for the rear. They're asking for 71 for the front and 85 for the rear. It is from Interchange Road, the main intersection is about a quarter mile from there. The letter height as it is 2'6", so less than a yardstick. So I mean, think of reading something a quarter mile away, smaller than a yardstick. There is no pylon sign by the road, so their only identification is their building sign. The front and the rear. There are new big blocks coming, so it's important for them to be able to be seen and visible. I mean, even when they come down, that access road to the mall, they're still well over 500 feet away from that access road. It's not like an atypical small plaza. You're running, parallel to, say, Route 20 or 38th Street. That's 30, 40, 50 feet back. So that's why it's probably imperative to them to have a sign that's seen from a distance. Same thing on the back. I mean, there's an interstate on the back in 79. Cars are flying. They want it as a decent size, so it's not creating a distraction, being too small, not being able to be read. Do you have any questions?
Well, a couple. I read we're 1,000 feet. Where'd you get that number, or where did they get that number?
That number, 1,000-foot number, that's over towards like the mall parking lot area, and they're like in front of the Mexican restaurant there, and Mandy's. So it's about 1,000 feet where a lot of the mall traffic is coming down, it's coming into there, but interchange from that access road, it's about 500 feet. So just some different numbers throughout, I guess. It can be seen from different areas. So people are coming from different, there's so many different entrances at the mall. It's hard to throw one point of entry to them.
And what hardship would this?
It's coming down to that. If the sign was smaller at, essentially for the front, it would be about 25% smaller. It's just not going to be visible from, the main roads. It's going to be small. The letters are only 2'6" high. So, 30 inches. Again, like I said, think of a yardstick from even 400 or 500 feet away. It's not easily readable, and they're a new guy in town, and they're trying to make sure people can see them coming in.
Okay. I'm trying to see if there's a hardship other than you can't see.
It's really just about the oddity of the mall and the oddity of the setbacks there. It's not an atypical plaza. That's basically where they're at, is they're trying to get a sign that's big enough for them to be seen.
Of course, there are other signs there that are that follow the.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have been there for a while, and they're quite large.
Yeah.
And their frontages may be larger. It is probably unique that a mall large tenant only has a 51-foot frontage. So I think a lot of those other frontages are probably much larger, and they could have been there before, certainly before this one, probably before 2019, I believe that was the last change. So they, like Dick's and the Jump Park, they've all been there for I mean, who knows what the zoning was then? It's what it was back then, it's not what it is now, but
What is I guess, the dimensions relate to what you're proposing versus what's currently existing on that plaza?
there's nothing, that space is, this is the old dress barn, so it's been vacant for probably,
A little over 2 years.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's been, so there's nothing there
There's
now
nothing there.
to base it off of. I do know from older drawings, the dress barn was a quite large set of letters that was there, but again, that was old code that doesn't apply now.
Right.
But, you know, they've got, you know, two competing entities. They've got DSW right down the lane from them, that there's a pretty good sized sign, and there's that other little shoe store coming into the mall, and that little Starbucks plaza that people see. And I think what they've relayed to me, they're just trying to get a size that is readable from those distances.
Well, it's understandable. I'm trying to understand what the difference is between the signs that are there and this proposed sign, the height and the width and the.
Correct. You know, I mean, I guess you could say like, you know, let's just say DSW is a much shorter name. So, you know, just DSW, I mean, that was, you know, they chose, you know, but certainly you can have a larger sign when you have 3 letters. The same thing with the exporting goods, you know, they've 5 letters. They can have a much larger sign because there's quite a few letters. It's a very linear layout. It's not more of a square sign. It's very linear, so it does lend itself to having to have a decent letter height that gets stretched across. And the same thing goes with that back side. You know, that's actually a little bit of a larger set of letters on the back. Again, it's just, they're trying to get visibility there.
Well, it deals with square footage, so I get it. You
Sure,
know, the
correct, yeah.
less letters, you can make it
Yeah.
whatever you might think it is. Is it, the signs, the areas of the signs proposed, is this the least that
Correct.
you would be considering? Is that,
As far as-
this is the minimal?
Yeah, I think what John is getting at is, I guess, how did you come to that size? Is
this is all
is
from,
this their standard sign package? for
there
the
is.
tenant?
So I mean, we're a subcontractor of the national, this advanced sign group that manufactures for Skechers across the country. So we're their boots on the ground, we're installing things. So there is set sizes that they have, that they make. You know, there's a sign A package that's, you know, 2'6". If there's a sign B package that's smaller, they only have so many size sign options available to them.
I guess, but you could create a smaller sign to fit within the parameters of the ordinance, is that?
I believe that there definitely is an option for them to go smaller. And if you go that way, they're gonna have to go smaller. Certainly, you know, I don't know what size smaller, they didn't share that with me. I'm kind of at the bottom of that food chain. They present to us, you know, need us to install, so, you know, certainly there's a smaller set that is available.
Did I hear you say, Kent?
Yes.
That the ordinance changed?
I don't know,
Did
I'm
you say
sure 2019, it was the same, it looked like it was the same in C4 and 19, but maybe previous to that, I'm sure it was different. It's always changed, like you may or may not remember from a decade ago, you know.
That is correct. The sign ordinance was updated in 2019. In 2019, prior to that, it would have been, you were allowed, I guess, 3 square feet for every 1 foot of linear frontage, up to 300 square feet, whichever was least.
So we're maybe about a third less than if it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, so that's why some of those other tenants along there have such large signs, because they've been there, but this is the new code. They're
Right.
aware of it. I think it's their brand specifics. They try to get as big as they can.
And Matt, as a point of clarification, the zoning ordinance that we're under and the zoning of this particular property is what?
The current zoning district is C2. The zoning ordinance was updated in May of this year, May 4th. And the requirements of the prior zoning district that would have been in C4 was basically changed to C2. So the regulations stayed the same for that the new C2 district.
So whether we apply the old ordinance or the new ordinance, it's the same with respect to this particular property for this hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But you're talking about the prior ordinance?
Way back, some of these
before
tenants that have been there
2019.
for 10,
Yeah.
15 plus
Right.
years, you know, you do have, and I get it, I think sometimes it becomes the Wild West. Certainly, you've got signs that are massive that don't belong on certain roads, and they've been there, and we all driven up and down, there's plenty of examples of that going down, you know, so it has to be, I mean, it's not applicable to now, but in their world, that they're, when they stand there and they look at this, they say, okay, Dick's sign is this much bigger, DSW is a competitor of ours, is this much bigger, but they've all been there for 10 plus years, so it's not, they weren't applying this back then, this code didn't exist then.
And Kent, what's your relationship to the property? You're not the landowner, you're not a
No.
lessee?
No, we are just the sign installer.
Okay. And I guess per the ordinance, there are some requirements in terms of authorization that need to be followed. So I guess if we were to grant this variance, or if the board, or if the hearing officer were to grant this variance, that would be something that we would need to have supplemented in the record. And so that would be something that you would just have to work with the property owner and or lessee to get an affidavit basically confirming your authority.
And I've got representative
Okay,
here.
okay. And who is,
Josh Parsons, I represent the landlord.
okay. Who is
Kafar.
Cafaro? Okay.
And there are no unique physical circumstances as part of this, right? Other
No,
than what
it
you've
is what
explained.
I would call, you know, a standard sign. There's
Yeah.
nothing that's unique about it. It is
Not the
standard.
sign so much, but the application of the sign, where it's going to be or anything like that. There's
Other than
no,
it's just a good distance away from
Okay.
major roads is all. Beyond that, I mean, it
Okay.
is
as are the other signs,
correct.
right? There's nothing special about the signs that's pushed back farther than
No.
anything
no,
else.
I mean, it is a
Okay,
standard plaza, standard signs. Everybody along there have standard signs. Nobody has, you know, big digital sign along the front that's, you know, they're all what I would definitely call standard plaza, other than it just sits considerable distance back from major roads is all.
yeah, okay.
So height-wise and everything else, you're saying it's pretty comparable to what's existing within the
Yes.
plaza?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely not, 2'6" is definitely not a large sign for a big box tenant. That's for sure. Most of those big box tenants, their signs are 3, 4, 5. You know, I mean, again, this goes back, when Sears was there, those letters were almost 8 feet high. That, again, it's not applicable to now, but again, a lot of these big box, I mean, they are very large letters that are typically at them, because they do have large storefronts. But,
Okay.
they're internally illuminated, they don't flash, they don't, you know, they're just a typical channel letter. You know, they don't change colors, things like that, they're just a stick.
They're not distracting
Correct.
to,
Yeah, they're industry standard for lumens. They're not, this is no different than any other atypical sign that you see out of Plaza.
okay. Is there anything else that you'd want to
Any
say, or?
questions for me, gentlemen?
Okay.
Do we have other testimony? And if you could, again, just state your name for the record.
Josh Parsons.
And address and who you're here on behalf of.
Address is 4063 West 32nd Street, 16506. I'm a landlord representative for Cafaro, operations manager for the property. Basically, from the landlord's perspective, certainly he's the professional when it comes to dimensions and things of that nature. Our concern is really just equality for all tenants. The neighboring tenants, as he stated before, kind of grandfathered in with other ordinances before this, with much larger signage. two major competitors in the area with much larger signage. Their storefront next door to them, Five Below, essentially fairly equivalent to the same size storefront as the new proposed tenant in Skechers with much larger signage. So to squeeze them in there with a very large or a very small sign just doesn't give them necessarily the most equal opportunity for success amongst all the other tenants on the property. And that's is that they're coming in with an equal opportunity to compete for business, which is good for everybody. And obviously, as an aesthetics point of view, from the front and the rear, again, much larger signage, and then they're kind of stuck with this smaller sign. So really it comes down to equality for the new tenant that's moving in.
And you said that the Five Below was comparable size in terms of the, I guess, the linear.
The front storefront is probably the most comparable size in that plaza. All the other stores, Home Goods, Vertical Jump, Dick's, much larger storefronts, even DSW, their letters are massive. But again, the new tenant moving in, the storefront isn't as large. They want to just have as large as letters as possible for the most visibility as possible.
Right.
Being a new tenant, they have to gain a footprint within the community. DSW is very established. Shoe Carnival is very established. Them being, like I said, a new business in town, this just gives them the best opportunity for visibility with bigger signs. And as he stated before, 79 cars flying by, the larger letters, the better. We don't have monument signs for the pavilion like the other main complex does. You know, coming off Peach Street, there is monumental signs with businesses plastered all over them. We do not provide that for the pavilion, so this is their own signage, and there's only two of them. So the larger the better.
I think what I heard you say is that the other stores have bigger signs because they have bigger frontages, and that this store may not have the frontage as the others, but
The one directly next door does have a very equivalent size storefront.
What's the square footage of that sign? Do you happen to know
I
that
do not know off
offhand?
the top of my head, I apologize.
Do you, Matt?
Excuse me, and that was Five Below? Okay. So for Five Below, that was installed, it looks like 2014. The front square footage of Five Below is 151 square feet, and the rear is 49.5 square feet. And the rear being the one that faces 79.
And then the proposal for this is what? It's 71.15 feet,
71, yeah. So Five Below is
substantially larger.
twice the size of what they're even proposing. So I mean, even comparing, what they're proposing for 71 is still half the size of what Five Below is. So they're still going to be significantly smaller appearing than neighboring tenants.
Then on the rear, it's 85.31, and Five Below is 49.5, right? Okay.
But that could have been their choice,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, and it was that probably was that old code. Again, it does not apply,
Yeah.
no, it does not apply. But back then, they were allowed to go that large, and I think it creates a hardship for them that they're competing against competitors that have 2 to 3 times the size sign that they have.
But again, just so I understand, you're saying that the front footage of this particular store is less than its neighbors.
Again, I do not have the exact
Okay.
square footage, but as aesthetically looking, it is the most equivalent to that storefront,
Okay,
as opposed to some of the larger ones, obviously, in the pavilion.
okay. But the larger sign is requested here.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, this is more for an equality purpose, for the landlord.
For a sign equality purpose.
Yeah, aesthetically, obviously, it would just look better to have more equivalent size signage, but then obviously, again, we want all tenants to have the ability to succeed. And again, a new business moving in, they would like to establish a footprint within the community. Like I said, DSW, Shoe Carnival have been around for a long time. This is a new store. This gives them an opportunity to gain that footprint with more visibility.
And just to confirm, it sounds like, I mean, obviously, you're supportive of the variance request. Then Kent, in terms of his authority to request the variance, you've given him that authority.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here that would be against it? I don't see anyone here. Is there any other testimony that we need to consider?
Matt, unless you have anything to say, and just to, as point of clarification, for purposes of this particular appeal, that's under, I'm gonna go back to it. That's under the old ordinance, is that correct? Under the C4 for the old ordinance? Based on the date of the application?
Correct.
Okay, so for purposes of this appeal, even though I understand that it's the same analysis and in the same criteria, this property, for purposes of this application, it's C4, and then we're seeking a variance under those grounds with respect to provision 145-86A of the old ordinance.
Correct.
Okay.
So it was just a change of title as opposed to what comprises the square footage and all that, right? The calculations.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so it's just a change of the header, nothing within for square foot or anything like that.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Anything else that we need to talk about?
I don't have anything
There's no
else.
other testimony.
Okay. Well, shall we adjourn for the?
Yeah, if you want to
Yes, I
speak.
would like to.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to adjourn at 7:50.
Well, we're just going to back to deliberate, right? So
Yeah.
we're going to come back and we're going to render a decision based
Okay.
on that. So, so if you stick tight, we'll convene in the back, and John and I, and then once we, I guess, have our decision, we'll walk back in and let you know.
Okay.
Do you need Matt back there?
Yeah. Okay, we're back in session? Okay. I'd like to announce that I've decided to not give approval to the appeal this evening, as we've heard. And you will be getting a written statement within 45 days. Okay? Thank you. Anything else?
No,
Adjourn the
I
meeting?
think that, yeah, just adjourn the meeting.
Okay, take a motion to adjourn?
Well,
Motion?
motion of one.
Second. All in favor? Yes. Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:28. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.